sessions. I just wanted to mention, I think the name is Bleuler's 5 A's that can happen, just so you know some of the symptomatic things with bipolar or just an all-time low in a person's life. Affective disorder can be a flat affect. Some of you here might be suffering that. Some of you watching online is like you've cried about something so often, so much for so long. Now you just don't feel. You've thought about something, you've been angry about it for so long that it's like, it's not that you're really over it, but you just don't have the energy to stay angry, you just don't feel. And that's a flat affect. Associative disorder is where you can end up being so disillusioned from trauma and things like that that you just have loose connections. You just you don't have stay power with people, churches, family, or groups, or therapy, or any of those things. You're in and out, in and out, in and out, right? And there's a power in redoing your brain by just having stay power. Just holding the line. Be like, if you decided you're going to be a part of a therapy class and it's 12 sessions, you get to session 3, know that you need to go through that whole thing. If you can have that stay power, you'll retrain the brain. But if you train yourself to come in and out of situations, like I'm going to get help, no, I'm not, I'm going to get help, that's all part of the yo-yo. So when you think bipolar, when you think high anxiety, it's the yo-yo we're trying to get to stop. We're also not to be flatline, which is just like, I don't feel. I don't laugh, I don't cry, I don't remember the last time I gut laughed. I mean, I'm just blah. We don't want that. That's part of what happens as a protective system where we're shutting everything down to the point we don't feel. And so, because we're trying not to yo-yo. So that's also part of it. Ambivalence is, you almost get to a point where there's so much going on. It's almost like we will love to hate someone. Right? It'll be like we have that thing of like, that's my job. I'm so mad, I can't get it resolved. And that person that you might hate might be yourself. You have that disorder or that way that's out of order where we're rolling this against ourself. There's others that are, and I won't go through the rest of them, but I just want to mention that inability to feel just kept coming up as she was talking. We either feel too much or we feel nothing at all. So what we're trying to get with any part of our brain just to come to a place of healing is what she talked about, balance. And I teach this when I'm teaching in recovery from addictions. The Bible says, be sober, be vigilant, right? For your adversary. The devil goes around seeking whom he may devour, right? He's like a roaring lion and he goes around seeking who he can get at. Well, the word sober there is the same that we use to have sobriety. And when you look that up, it does not mean to be without a drug. It means to be well balanced. And so we can't face an enemy in our life. We can't face painful things. We can't face hurts unless we can get in that place of balance. And balance doesn't always look like the perfect flat line on balance. That's perfectionism, and that will plant some seed that'll cause all kinds of other things. But that balance is that, if you're balancing on a wire, which I've never been too hot at that, although we used to run on the beams in the barn, way up high where you can fall off and break your neck. But we used to do that, run across there but you have that sense of balance, and balance does this. So what Kim was talking about is really you have those days where like, not so good. Okay, I'm back. All right, now I'm back. Oh, now I'm the other way. Okay, now I'm back. You're going to have those times where you're bringing things into balance, and yelling and disciplines that are really extra strict tell you that you can't move. You have to get it right or you don't get it at all. Let's just by a show of hands, let me see how many of you got some of that as you were growing up. That you got to get it right or don't do it at all. Even the saying, if you want something done around here, if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. Which really is saying, I got to get it right or we're just not going to do it. See, so when we do that in the brain, that's a standard that your brain, all your chemicals and everything will try to line up to that. And you just can't do it. When you fall off of that, you fall so hard, you face plant. And it's a depression that will hang for weeks. So as she was talking, God just moved on my heart and some of the things that she was saying, just bringing back things that I've been healed of, or bringing into light some things that I still need to press into. And I think that's what's happened here tonight. For those of you who are watching online, it's just knowledge will come in and go, yeah, I got to pay attention to this. I got to reset myself. I'm not crazy. There's nobody here that's crazy. We all have moments where we're out of balance. And sometimes we don't even realize, you can run across those beams in the barn and be really good at it, but have a day where all of a sudden you're off, right? And you got to do everything you can to pull yourself back up into that balance. And that's where we have to recognize when we're going out of balance and how to get ourselves back in. That's the skill that's needed for all mental illness. Now, there's a difference. I want to clarify this. There's a difference between trained behavior mental illness, or lack of knowledge in mental illness, or a physiological problem like a brain injury, or, we were taking meth for too many years, and which one day is too long for that. But and we've done some brain damage. There's some things that can now be off in the brain. That's like breaking a leg, but you're breaking something in the brain. The other is trauma-based, or it's life command-based. Like, you got to get it right or don't do it at all. And there were a lot of hands raised here, which really says, if you can identify it with that quick, you've been out of balance at some place in your life because of that life command. I had that same life command, and I got it pretty much in balance. But I know if you touch certain areas, I might not even know what they are. My plane might just fly a little bit crooked in that. Well, we're going to open up here for questions and answers. And so I'm going to, anybody have a question, first of all? And I want to make sure the mics, we got some hands popping up here. So Dave, you got, that mic works? Yep. Okay.
Okay, so what would cause, you got the perfect, everything has to be done perfect, to everything is done like half-assed. Like growing up with a father that would start projects and just leave them, and that was the time, we thought we would spend together. But what causes the, not to complete stuff, not to follow through?
Okay, so I want to address that, and then I'll turn it over to Kim if you've got anything to add. Part of that can be training, right? So training can say, I can't complete something. Training will say, I'm not going to be successful. Training says, I tried, but I never won. All of those kinds of things that can happen in a system will subconsciously direct us to, when we're doing something, to just not quite finish it. We'll get just about there, but then no, right? It's like hanging a door, but you never put the doorknob on, but you're going to get to that, and you're going to get to that, and but you don't do it. It's that type of thing. He may have what I was talking about, like you said, the all or nothing thinking, and all or nothing thinking is out of balance. So it's a training in the brain. You have anything to add to that?
Sometimes I see people do that when they're trying to keep themselves safe. Because what if you worked really hard to finish something and it was awesome to you, but it wasn't to everybody else, and you got put down? So don't finish it. Don't just get it almost there and then leave it. Then nobody can put you down because it's not done yet. So I see people that sometimes do that, and they're kind of just sabotaging their own success because for whatever reason, they don't feel that they should be able to be successful. They need to give themselves permission, even if you have to say it to yourself, like, I got permission to be successful at this. I say that sometimes when I cook. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. That's when I say it's okay to fail.
Someone back here had? Oh, right here, Ashley.
Okay, well, you touched on this a little bit, but I have a kind of an ongoing question that I've been struggling with. Can bipolar be healed by God and spiritual healing and managed without medication, or is it degenerative needing permanent medication?
There is no disease. There is nothing that is beyond God's healing.
Yeah. Yes.
So go after it.
Yeah.
Hardcore.
So we know that when you look up the word healing, there's two meanings for it, and that's the suddenly, and then there's the knitting together. So sometimes people they'll set their faith toward going off of medications or working alongside of a doctor, somebody that they trust and they have a safety net, it's not an all or once, right? Because your body is adapting and you can feel the healing. It's like, wow, I don't need this as much. I feel the healing. But that's really going to be under supervision but you set your faith toward it. And getting balance, which she talked about, and we just went through that all or nothing thing, bringing it more to the balance in the middle and keeping it there gives your body its own chance to heal and build the serotonin and the things that are needed to support the brain. We have to give time for that. The more upset you are, the less your stomach lining produces serotonin, for instance. So then, because that's where the majority of it is produced. It's not in your brain, it's in your stomach. So when you're upset, where this goes off first, right? I don't feel like eating, or I want to eat too much. There's something very upset. Just balancing that one thing will make a difference. And believing God that he will show you balance in your body and in your mind, he's going to do that. It's going to be awesome.
I just wanted to add one more
Oh,
thing
go
to
ahead.
that. One of the things, if somebody, you're really trying to just keep that balance in your life, that on a personal level that I have tried, because there were some areas of my life that were not in balance that I just really didn't have any information on, is, and I actually gave you like a whole big case of them, and I am a fan of Joyce Meyer's, but whatever you can get your hands on to listen to constantly, do it. I mean, right down to Making Right Choices, I think was the very first CD set that I ever listened to, because I just needed permission to make some right choices in my life and not feel bad about it because other people were mad at me. That whole shaming, guilt thing that comes from when you're little and get yelled at and you got to please people in order to make them happy so they love you. I had to break that cycle first. The other thing, and I didn't mention this, but I'll just say it while I'm thinking of it, the very first lie that everybody believes when they're struggling with anything is you're the only one struggling with it. That is the very first lie that keeps people from being successful at what they need to do. You are not the only person struggling, right? And there are people in this room that struggle. I have my own struggles. And I mean, there's nobody that doesn't have a struggle in this life, right? So when you start, that thing pops in your head and you're like, I'm the only one in this boat, kick it out and just put nonstop. I had nonstop stuff. I would drive to the cities I commuted for the last 10 years, and that's all I've done is listen to one CD after another, after another, after another.
Anything positive programming?
I just want to say a little bit. I was diagnosed bipolar 1 at a very, very young age, and I was put into group homes, and I was at the state hospital, and God rocked my world, and he will do it for you. I'm on 2 medications now, and I'm 41. I live on my own. I pay my bills, and I work a job, and all my working life, what did I do? I worked with the mentally ill. And I just want you to know that God will do it for you. He did it for me. He could do it for you. I have a lot more to go. But I'm just saying, like, I want to encourage you, it's a true story. I was in group homes and I was at the state hospital. Like, nobody even knows that, but it's true. And, he will. It works. God works.
Amen. There's one right in front of you there, Dave.
I just wanted to know the name of that book again and the author.
I don't know who wrote it, but it's called Emotional IQ.
Oh, Emotional IQ.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that book.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, that's okay.
Hold on, sorry. I was just wondering where manic ideas and thoughts come from, like delusions and stuff. Why is there like a common theme amongst people with bipolar to have religious delusions specifically?
I have seen it a lot with people, not so much with bipolar, but more with schizophrenics. And schizophrenia is a whole different shooting match. And in my honest opinion, I think it's your subconscious. If you have a faith in God, trying to overpower your conscious somewhat, if you're in a manic state and you can't get it together. And other than that, I do not know. But I do see that with people. But on the flip side, in healthcare, this is super sad. If somebody comes in with mental health illness and they're praying and stuff, if you're in the ER or the hospital, be very careful doing that because they will put that in your chart that you have religious ideation. Did you know that? This is off recording, right? I'm just saying, be mindful of that.
So, so I'm going to deal with that part from the church's stance in that a lot of times if someone's in a manic state, right away people are going to cast a demon out or they're going to do something like that. And I'm not saying that, there aren't people who need something cast out. But when you're at a weak state like that and your mind is not operating the way that it should be already, that is not a time really to be breaking out in deliverance, number one. And number two, we're not recognizing that they're in a manic state many times. We just had this a few weeks back, and my recommendation wasn't taking authority over something, was you need to get to the ER, you need to go there now, right? Because what we're saying is you're out of balance. And to get to safety, we need to bring you back into balance. And we can talk about these other things a different time, but we need to get you to safety and get you to balance. And so it doesn't help, though, when the subconscious is saying, things like when you're in a manic state, like I'm Jesus, or I know when Jesus is going to return, it's going to be tonight, or, things like that. Then, right away people will jump on that and be like, yep, that's a demon for sure. They're mocking God. No, all kinds of stuff can come out of your subconscious when your cognitive thinking is disorientated and, and yet it's taking charge and you're trying to get some message through. So we have to be sensitive to where people are at and create that balance. The other thing is anything that would indicate mental illness is going to have times where we're out of balance. And so what we don't want to bring to, if we're ministering to somebody or helping somebody or counseling somebody or coming alongside of them, we don't want to go where they're at. We just want to come alongside of them and help them to calm down. Right? So if somebody's yelling, we don't respond to them yelling back. Well, you need to, what? All we're going to do is ramp the situation up. There's ways that we can just bring that down because it's out of balance right now. And so then to help the brain, you're trying to bring that plane to a place where both wings are somewhere near balance. Now we first can reason. You're not going to reason with somebody who's in a state like that. Now, it's sad for those of you who are watching and you've gone through years of addiction. Alcoholism, porn is another one that can throw off the chemicals in your brain and you can end up in a manic state. Gambling can put you into a manic state. There are people who put diapers on and will sit at a machine and they'll sit there as long as they can, and lack of focus on anything else and lack of sleep and lack of everything, they're going to put their brain out of balance, and it takes time to bring that back in. Another one is video games. Does it mean video games are bad and you should never play them? Not necessarily, but what I am saying is there are people who will, once again, put a diaper on and they will they'll put all kinds of munchies next to their computer and they don't sleep for 3 or 4 days if they can pull it off because they're going to win the game where they're playing with people all over the world. Well, they have halfway houses now for people who get stuck in cartoon reality. So a lot of the games are in cartoon, right? They're not real people. And so they get up from the game, finally, they'll walk outside, and the trees and everything are in cartoon now. They flip their brain's perception, and now they're more in the game than they are in the now. So sometimes that's what happens in a manic state also. So when we're dealing with this, whether you've gone through it or not, when you add a drug to any of that, you're exaggerating every recording port. And what I mean by that is we record everything through our 5 senses. Now you just lit that thing on fire, and there's no way you're going to fly your plane like this, right? You're going to go hallucinogenic, and there's going to be ports that'll open up. You're going to hear voices and all kinds of things. And then people will say, you're crazy. Well, you're out of balance right now. The real you's in there. We just need to bring you back to a balanced state. Makes sense? I like honesty, and we're not filming the crowd right now, right, Kevin? We're not? Okay, so can I see a show of hands of people who, you drank too much or you stayed up too late or there was something that you had that moment that was like, I don't even want to think about that moment. It went so bad, it's not even funny. See, so you know what I'm talking about, but you're not crazy. You're here. You have a destiny. You are loved by God, right? You just had a moment. You're not a label. You had a moment. And so once you figure out when that plane doesn't fly in the place that it needs to be, then we set up the parameters to say, how can we make sure that doesn't happen again? Instead, if we're shamed, we'll be like, I don't want this to happen again. I'm pretty sure it's going to, but I ain't asking any for help because they're going to think I'm crazy. So the people who are having success, like your question, in healing are the people who have come forward and said, help me. And they find a safe group of people, and it's like, oh, your plane is, hey, did you notice there's a little bit of turbulence going on there? You know, you're going to have to pay attention. Can't just put it on autopilot. We gotta bring it up. And they'll help you do that. And so that's a big part of what's needed for healing.
Also, I think I wanted to add to that is you have to give yourself permission to make good choices. And sometimes you start making some healthy choices and it makes other people mad. And that's okay. They can be mad. They'll get glad in the same shoes they get mad, and it's fine. People get mad at me sometimes too. It's okay. They're still okay. I'm okay. We're all okay. So stop and think about that when you're in that situation and you're like, oh man. Because I've always find it interesting that, and I see this with mental health too, people are like, I'm going to get it right this time, and then they go out and they do the same thing over and over again. That's actually truly like almost the definition of insanity. Because if you're trying the same thing and it didn't work the first time, and you're going to try it again and expect a different result, it's not going to happen. Yeah. So try something else and give yourself permission to fail at it and to succeed at it. It's okay. There's lots of stuff I try that I fail at.
We have one back there.
I just want to say personally that thank you for talking about cognitive behavioral therapy. With my depression and things that have happened in my life, I've gone to lots of talk therapy, 20 years on antidepressants, but it wasn't until I really dove into cognitive behavioral therapy that I was able to really unpack the resentment and anger in my life. And I was like, close to 60 at the time. So, I've always felt like I'm mourning the loss of a normal childhood, right? And so, so just to be able to unpack that and there, you're with someone at such a length of time in cognitive behavioral therapy. It's not like you're going in for a 1-hour session and then they're, saying come back again. So, just really great stuff.
It is pretty great stuff. I would like to touch base on a little bit of that. When you grow up in a home where you didn't get to be a kid, take some time as an adult to be a kid. Right?
They're getting ideas. We got one over here.
Okay, so mine's kind of two of them. You had mentioned something about like if you're like, let's say you have bipolar, and if you're going into the ER, something about a bracelet, like kind of like if you have diabetes or having people, like obviously having them know.
So go ahead.
So I guess I'm wondering.
So some people, especially with bipolar 1, will become very manic, and those are the people that hop on the bus and their family can't find them, and they just wind up wherever and they don't know who they are. It'd really be ideal if people had a bracelet on so people could identify them. Because I have had in my personal career so many people sit in the ER for weeks. I had no idea who they were. They didn't know who they were. Nobody knew who they were. And it's so sad because you need to bring some people that, one, to find out their medical history, because what if I'm giving them medication they're allergic to? Bad idea. And two, people are generally worried about them. So it's a great idea to have a bracelet that says whatever, even if it's just got your name and a phone number or something on it. That's an awesome idea.
I was diagnosed with bipolar type 1 2 years ago, and I forgot what the other thing was. The other thing was I'm still trying to learn what sets off or like what makes me automatically like all of a sudden I'm feeling manic and trying to identify those things. But what if like it just happens and I'm not able to figure out what triggers that? Like, how do I deal with that?
So you got to have a safety net. What's your safety net? Like, who's there watching you? Who's with you every day? who can say this, you were doing X, Y, and Z when this is happening, because you won't remember. So, like, who can you trust?
I'm
to
usually
help
by
you.
myself or in my room. I kind of isolate a lot.
Right.
But
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's, eh, right. You need a mentor.
okay. Thank you.
So, yeah, so part of the memory loss or just not being cognitively aware of what's going on at the time just says, oh, I need a higher level of care. Then I need to have somebody checking in or observing or doing something like that. I like the bracelet idea for people. I think that's a great thing, especially if you've suffered that. Now, you know, I've shared this story and people maybe thought it was funny. I didn't think it was funny. I thought it was very sad. My brother, who's since passed away this last year, got on a lawnmower tractor in Chicago and headed down the interstate to come and visit me in Colorado. That was his reality. Now, was he suffering some bipolar? Yeah, his polars were definitely off, but he had added drugs to it and it exaggerated, like all those ports blew up. And that's what made sense to him. And he was not aware that he did it. He was aware in his mind that he was coming to see me, but he wasn't cognitive about, like, this is what happened, even after they explained it to him. So that's dangerous. And so for you to have concern about yourself, because you know, like, well, there's times you go into a state, right, and you can't tell when you're entering that. One of the things he would say is, I can tell when I've entered, is I don't sleep for about 3 days, and then he would write on the calendar how many days he was in bed. But he'd sleep so intensely, then sometimes he couldn't tell if it was night or day or whatever. He'd have someone call him and say, it's Tuesday or something like that. He didn't have people around to really take him into that. So you're in a place that we need to talk about that next section for you to be able to, how can we make sure? Because if you can't see yourself, how do you know? Here's the other thing that's kind of a stigma, and this is going to be real touchy talking about it because people have gone through stuff, right? And we don't want judgments, and there is no shame and all of that. It is what it is, right? And so we're trying to work with it. But at the same time, when there's that sensation of not being aware, that's not the only diagnosis where you can be where you're not aware, right? You can have ADHD ramped to the point you're just not aware of yourself. You can have panic disorder and lose awareness of yourself. There's all kinds of different things. And that's why it's good to get education to sort some of that out. So when you're self-aware, you could grab a hold of it. But a lot of times, manic states in the bipolar 1 or whatever are not predictable for some people. And for other people, it's a cycle that they'll go, it's every 6 weeks. It's every 6 weeks. So some of you might know what I'm talking about. If you've gone through that, you're like, I don't know what it is. It's every 3 months. And nobody really knows why or what. And it's just, it'll cycle like that. So once you pay attention, you start tracking when these things have happened, then you can set up a system to be able to give help. The other thing I was going to mention is this. It's just like panic disorder, which I had for years coming through some of the trauma that I have. I just have a panic attack standing in the grocery store. Everyone would say, well, what's going on? What scared you? I don't know. My body would just do it. It was so used to doing it, it would just do it. As strong as it comes on, and as real as it is to you, within a half an hour as it passes, you're fine. So what that tells the other people looking in is like, you're making this up. You are making this, you're manipulative. And so that's when we get misunderstood and people start to take the label and slap us around with, I don't even think you are, because you're, and judgments will come. And so we have to be careful we don't do that with people, although there are people who will take a label and manipulate with it. Oh, that's the bipolar, or that's, whatever, panic disorder, or I just got triggered, or whatever. Those things are thrown around quite a bit for people to get their own way. But there are people, as quick as it comes on, and they cycle on something, it'll be gone, and it was so real to them, and then it's not there. They're thinking, maybe I am making this up. Maybe I am crazy or whatever, because we'll come in and out of these cycles because you're up and then you're down, and we're trying to get it to just flow along here. Any other questions? It's a hard subject in some ways. Oh, well, we'll get this on mic here.
I was wondering if a person goes and actually gets a diagnosis, how difficult or how easy is it to get to somebody who does the cognitive behavioral treatment? Because isn't there some expense to that typically?
It's the same price as any other therapist. It's a lot of probably the same type of counseling that, I don't know if you've gone to counseling with Mary or not, but it's a lot of basically walking into the trauma that you've been through and being brutally honest, like word vomit it out, talk about what it made you feel like, and figure out how you're going to process your emotions and where the balance is from there. So in my opinion, I think of all the things that psychiatry or psychologists have come up with, that's the only thing that truly I feel really is very successful. You can talk to people and be like, yes, this happened to me. But there are programs out there that people can go through. I know like Wildflowers was a program that people can go through for abuse, especially sexual abuse. What a fantastic program that was.
Yeah.
Talk about something like that. But if you call a therapist's office, you can always ask if they do CBT. And they should be licensed to do it or should have training in it. Or I don't think it bills through insurance any different, but I don't know much about that piece of it all. And then, of course, you have to go to somebody who's got their head on their shoulders straight, because some people that are out there should not be doing what they're doing. Is it working?
It's sad that we have to go and be like, okay, is it you or is it me?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you're off, and you're trying to sit there and you're on a timer to get this help, and you don't really know. You don't really know if you're going to follow through and then spend the money and you're actually going to get the help. I'm a strong believer in the counseling that the word does is everybody has a story, and everybody's story has the right to be heard. And a big piece of how trauma affects our system and offsets us is when you believe you don't have the right to be heard. When you believe you can't be heard, you also believe you're not worthy of love. And if you're not worthy of love, then you'll believe that you didn't come from the Creator. Because who is He to me? I'm not anybody to Him. It separates us from God. And when we have our story, as crazy as my story is, or as her story is, or some of your stories, we were talking about this before with Roxy, it's like, in the time you thought you were just going to die trying to live through it. And at the same time, now I can look back and just laugh at some of the stuff because it was crazy. It's a crazy story, but it has the right to be heard. Now I share it in the right places, right? Just go telling everybody your story, because like the Bible says, don't throw your pearls before swine, or they'll come and trample on stuff that's precious to you. But at the same time, if you don't get your story out and it's sitting in the inside of you, it's like a poison that's unresolved. So resolution is everything. That's why when we teach anger classes here, we teach anger resolution, not anger management. I don't really care to manage my anger as much as I just want to resolve it so that I don't have to use the anger to have a boundary to begin with. Okay? Does that make sense?
I think on that same line of that question you're asking, there's tremendous power in people that have walked through similar abuse or struggling with the same thing, that are getting the same information. 4 or 5 people in a group, in a class, that is incredibly powerful, because it takes away that whole, I'm the only one going through this, and also you get to hear other people's stories, and you get to hear what works for them, what didn't work for them. And it's sad that we live in a world full of stigma about mental health problems and bipolar, because really it shouldn't be any different than people being like, yeah, I have high blood pressure. It's kind of the cards we're dealing, that the deck of hands that we got, and the deck of cards we have, and we're playing the game, right, as best as we can.
I was going to say the same thing, that groups are extremely healthy, and also that a lot of people who have struggled with bipolar for any amount of time tend to isolate because they've gone through instances where they have pushed the people that they trust and care about the most away or used them up. So it is very typical of people to isolate. And I just wanted to say to the young lady over there that I think we can all pray for you, that you'll find those people that will stand by you. Because it is very, very hard once we've gone through years and years of that kind of stuff to have people come back and trust us.
Well, everybody wants to be loved and accepted for who they are, right? So, and people are extremely judgmental, especially in Western society or this society that we live in. Now, I think if we were in a third world country, I don't think people judge each other like that because they're just trying to survive. So did we kind of create some of our own problem here? Because everyone's like, well, you have to act like this. And then you from the time that we're little, we're socialized. You go to school, you got to walk in a straight line. You got to, you have to sit at your desk a certain way. People get more praise if they're the better students. And I mean, I can't tell you how many parent-teachers conference I personally have gone to, and they're like, your kid never walks in a straight line. He doesn't seem to care what's happening. If anything, they're off doing their own thing. Well, yeah, because they're their own people. They're gonna be fine in life though. But as a culture, we're cultured in the United States to all be the same. But why? So I don't understand that piece. I get it in school, you gotta have some sort of law and order. I get it, you're herding cats, right? But in reality, like what difference does it make? So I'm sitting at graduation with my husband the other day and I'm like, I don't know, is our kid gonna walk in a straight line when she goes up there to get her diploma? Because what if she doesn't? Then what? Was it 12 years of wasted time? Like, she walked alone, she did fine. I mean, I don't know. I feel like people spend way too much time in their life worrying about stuff that does it really matter? Like, does it? I don't know. Like, I spent years of my life worrying about if my house was decorated well enough, and I haven't cleaned it for at least 2 weeks. I've been too busy. That's totally out of my norm, but I'm just too busy. I'm like, someone needs to help this place. It's bad. Right.
So also, I just want to mention this, that sometimes if we have a family member who's going through something that has some level of mental illness, there is a stigma or an embarrassment or a feeling because we're not sure what to do or how to act or how much of it's real, or I don't feel any of those things that they're feeling. I don't go through what they're feeling or whatever. And it can really cause a wedge in relationships. It can cause a wedge where you do feel like on the outside. And like you were saying, isolation takes place because you're just like, I'm defective. I'm weird. There's something so wrong with me. And that's wrong. That's wrong to have that. We don't do that with people with kidney infections, right? It's an organ, it's a place, it's an interface, it's a computer that sometimes has glitches. We're using that interface, this gray matter, and sometimes it has glitches. And we get frustrated because it doesn't always think the way that we want. And when we trip that emotional base that we've been given to and we go right into that automatic behavior that we've been trained, it's hard to pull out of that. It's hard to pull out of it. But with God, you can do it. And it's just a retraining of the brain. I say just, but it's a bigger deal than that. I mean, it didn't go in pretty, so a lot of times it doesn't come out pretty, your story. And that's just, we have to come to grips with that. I'm very proud of all of you here. And I know those of you watching online are distant out there from what we've got going on here, but just to have people be able to say, yes, I was diagnosed, or yes, this is what I went through, or this is what I'm believing for, and it stay a safe place, you rocked it tonight. That's awesome. And so, well, praise God. So this is the cultured feeling that we have to give the lost, the people who don't feel safe like this. We have to always keep the safety at the churches and at the groups and things like that. So we're going to be waiting up front if anyone has, more of a in-depth question or a personal question they didn't want to ask, on the recording or whatever. But let's stand. I want to agree in prayer with us. Together, we're going to stand for some things. There was a prophecy that came forth, I believe, I'm not really that hot at timings, but it was quite a few years ago already. And right in the middle of it, I just circled it. I got this on paper at home, and it says, even the very brains of people will be healed. And I thought it was really odd at the time. I'm like, okay, because to me, that's like saying, even the very pinky toes of people, that God got specific with a part of the body. But in the day and age we're living in, we're more affected now than ever by molecular energy and things like that. And so it's going to take super on the natural to keep our brains healthy. And yet it's just an interface that our spirit lives through. And so, Father, we just pray right now. We agree for more and more healing right now over everyone who's suffering in any way in an area, whether it be depression, oppression, Lord God, fear-based traumas that are there, any of the things that have been diagnosed over them, or sentencing that they question, where they felt sentenced by a term, and they're not quite sure if they even are in that category. Or maybe they were for a while and they've grown out of it. That they would be free and explore some of the things that were laid out here tonight, that the limits would come off of our thinking, that we have the right to be free to share our story, to embrace where we're at, to look to the future, to bring closure to the past. We have permission in all these areas because you gave it to us. Through your Son, Jesus, you gave us permission to be healed. And so we thank you for that permission, and we believe for it and receive it right now in Jesus' name. Thank you so much.